Welcome back to the Joel Fernandez Show. I'm Joel Fernandez. And today we're just going to jump right into the show once again. This is a show for starseeds and alchemists, manifestors and truthers. Axiom 1. We all know that the deep state, the hidden enemy, is pushing their agenda, and they've been pushing us to the brink this year. But we are moving forward and exposing the lies and creating an awareness through which we can manifest a world and build a world that we know we're capable of. And honestly, we know that we deserve. Because we don't deserve a lot of this nonsense that's been thrown at us. We don't deserve a lot of the stuff that we have had to put up with this year. Really. But it's just exposed a lot that's been kind of backlogged and was just ready to burst the dam. And we kind of had to deal with it all at once. It wasn't that bad. It did come in increments, and some places had it much worse than others. But we got to see that there are people from really high up pulling the strings.
Now you get this straight. We own you. You're ours. We can shit on you from such a height, you'll think God himself has crapped on you. You understand?
He better f***ing understand.
Yeah, he better have.
We would be shocked to see, like, who's running the show, what they're doing to do it. Like, this is espionage at its finest level. It's not the James Bond kind of...
And Dulles and the CIA actually helped Fleming write his books and paint the CIA in a favorable light. And they also, Dulles helped produce Thunderball to make the CIA and agents look like honorable, cool people. The CIA actually helped him write the books and write the script for that movie. And then the president of MPAA was actually providing intelligence to the CIA as an operative in that position in Hollywood.
Mr. Fleming, in your books there's a great amount of detail. Is this detail based on personal experience? Do you make it up? Where does it come from?
Well, I can say it's 90% from personal experience, really. Of course, if I started sticking too close to the true espionage work of today, I should be in trouble with the Official Secrets Act in England, even supposing I had access to information.
It's not the James Bond kind of go in a building and shoot it up, and, it's intelligence infiltrating the way people think by infiltrating education and infiltrating the military. The government, very powerful way of influencing, infiltrating, and taking over a whole ideology and a whole group of people. That's what we're looking at when we look at this. This is actually, we're in the middle of a world war here. And there are people pulling the strings that we wouldn't even imagine are, but they're behind the curtains. And I'm sure their day is coming, because nothing can exist forever. There's nothing hidden that will not be revealed. But it's not the people that we're seeing in the public space or in the media. It's definitely other people, and very low-key people that we wouldn't even suspect. We probably know who they are, a lot of them at least, maybe not all of them, but they are very prominent people, and they're in control of a lot of these things. So we're actually going to use that to segue right into our first Illuminati playing card. We're going to keep covering these. I got so many. Like, this list keeps growing every time I go through these cards. Every time I'm looking at them with you guys, I see more, and I'm just like, oh, there's so much I want to talk about. So that's going to fuel a lot of the show. And if it diverts from there, we'll see. But for now, this is what we're going to look at. Because what do we have here? Hidden influence. Hidden influence. We have the judge, and he's making his verdict. The gavel has come down, and it's striking, and he's got his verdict made. But what do we see in the background? A cloaked silhouette with a hat. Like I said, people pulling the strings that you wouldn't even imagine. But what does the card have to say for itself? The group of your choice now has global power. Oh, wait, global power? We're talking global power here. This is how much influence we're looking at. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it. These cards were made quite a while ago. We're seeing it play out on a global level right now. It's literally CCP versus Alliance. World War IV and World War III was the Cold War. The war with communism. The whole world. Like, you mean to tell me Vietnam, Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, and of course the whole Soviet Union? You mean to tell me that all these countries, and this wasn't a world war? And considering the free world, wasn't this the United States involved in this Cold War? Right? So, but the hidden influence, back to the card, global power, equal to its regular power. So we see just how the influence spreads. That's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a card that says you have influence that not only spreads from your regular local power, now you have that same power globally. You don't have more power globally, but exactly the same amount of power you have here, you can influence the same decision by a judge somewhere else that has the global decision, but you don't have more or less power. This is all it's saying, and the cards are very specific, so sometimes if you read between the lines, you notice this stuff. Link this card to the group. This requires an action from your Illuminati. It may be played at any time, so that's just card rules. But what kind of hidden influence are we seeing in the world today? Because we see corruption on literally almost every level. Almost every level is being exposed with corruption. Like I say in my other video, government, media, the health industry, the military complex, the industrial complex, the whole commercialization of the world. It's funny because people were looking at the election. They're like, oh, our government's going to save us. Well, I don't think the government's going to save you. Just because you see maybe one person in the government that is actually doing the, like, they're not playing a politician, that doesn't mean that that's going to save you. You can't rely on that. And then people were waiting on the Supreme Court. And now what do we see? The Supreme Court can't make this decision, and we have to see the decision has to come from us literally doing the inner work. But how does it play out in the physical external world? The Supreme Court has to deny the case and cause all this corruption to bubble up and show that the Supreme Court is made up of individuals. These individuals are divided. As much as I say in my other video, which I cover in this subject, the feat of clay and iron. The clay and iron makes iron ore. It's never one thing. It's always extractable. The iron or the dirt. You can't have both homogeneously mixed. So the Supreme Court is shown to be divided. And that's why it's corrupt. It's not that everybody on the Supreme Court is corrupt. It's not that the decision would have been made, but that it's made up of divided individuals. And what do we see in the card? The divided individuals. We see all 9 of them, and what's at the top? The triangle eye. The pyramid. The controller. Against a green background? Well, well, well. We mustn't blame the Supreme Court. We must just see that all of this is to expose corruption where there is corruption so that it's weeded out and so that it can't exist. Because if it was like 1 or 2 things that was cleaned up, that would be nice, but the corruption on this deep level would still be there. Like, I mean, look at how much is being exposed. Wouldn't it be nice to live in a world where that's all cleaned up? So we see the Supreme Court has, the cards say, by using its action, the Supreme Court can cancel one action of any other government group. Yes, this includes government groups outside the U.S. Don't ask. You don't want to know. And we see that governments from all over the world, I heard from the governor of South Dakota just the other day that there was over 100, I believe it was either 130 or 160 just in the last month
Listen, in South Dakota, we are a small state. Just in the month of July, I had 16 billion attempts to hack into my state system by 165 countries. So when you talk about that happening to South Dakota, just to our state system, think about how many people have an interest in messing with our elections and the vote tallies and what they can do.
And this is just a state. Imagine what the United States is doing. This is how it goes. People are crazy to assume that there's nothing to look at here, folks. Everything's clean and everything's proper and you can go about your business. Everything's cool. I'm sure a lot of us know what's up, but it's sad that this is the state of awareness of humanity is in. This is sad, and it sucks that we have to change it this way, and we have to start from an internal meditative space because we can't literally go out and change people. But we're going to do it, and we're going to create this world, and we're already doing it. That's why this stuff is being weeded out in the first place. Otherwise, it would have progressed, and it would have progressed in a way that people just accepted it. And it would have just spiraled down, all the way down to the Antichrist. But we're not seeing the Antichrist, we're seeing the Christ expose the Antichrist. Because the Antichrist can't exist in the light of Christ.
The darkness is passing and the true light is already shining.
It's sad. It's sad that most churchgoers aren't waiting for Christ. They're all waiting for the Antichrist. They're bent on this doomsday scenario. But they can't envision a world where Christ comes and takes over. And Christ awakens in all of us. That's what it means when it says Jesus lives in your heart. It's not a metaphor. It's not some silly symbolic thing. It's the awakening of Christ consciousness in all of us. And that's the Aquarian age. It's the next step. It's the next era. And it's shown in the big clock in the sky. I mean, this isn't rocket science here. This is just the way it is. This is just the way it is. But I digress. So much has been withheld. And it's not cool because we are amazing creatures and we don't even know it. We are literally the aliens on this planet. When we look around, we see the animals and we see the plants and we see the whole kind of ecosystem. But we are the ones out of place here with our cities and our structures and our technology. All of this stuff that we do is out of this world. But where does it come from? It's because we're plugged into a genetic family. And that's in our DNA code. And that is literally, we are sons of the Elohim. Humanity is one of these sons. And we just have to wake up as one of them. Wake up. And then we see that they've been telling us a lot of nonsense. They've been rewriting history. So we see on this photo, the door actually says Ministry of Truth. So that's very interesting because there's always a department that takes care of truth. But whenever it says truth, you know that they're telling you something not so true. There's a Russian saying, and it just means that there's no... Well, there was like newspapers in Soviet Russia, right? The Pravda means truth, and Izvestia means the news. And there was a saying like, there's no truth in the news, and there's no news in truth. It's a pun on the newspapers, but it literally is a pun on the way things are in real life. There's no truth in the news, and there's no news in truth. So this card, Ministry of Truth, and in the trash, we see History of the World, and some other books.
It's amazing.
What's up now, Torino?
This history, it's all lies. It says Hitler killed himself, and then we nuked Japan. And people believe this shit. Jesus. Well, if it makes them sleep better at night, I guess.
And next to the trash, we see Rome. of course, the history of Rome. I'm going to be talking about that, as I said, the whole revamping of curriculum and right brain school and all of that. It's coming, but all in due time. But the card says any one alignment of any destroyed group may be retroactively added, removed, or reversed. Retroactively, they just tell you what. I'm not going to say anything about specific historical situations that we're taught about. I'll just tell you that the ones that are stressed as major historical events, yeah, those are the ones you got to look at first. This can affect any goal which involves destroying a certain number of groups of some alignment. Play this card at any time. It requires an action by your Illuminati or actions by media groups with a total power of at least 8. That says a bit, but I don't really play the game, so yeah, I don't really know too much about the numbers. But anyway, very interesting stuff because, yeah, our history, we are amazing creatures. And I mean, there are people that have pointed out like history of like the Native Americans or some of the natives and some of the African places, like with the work of Michael Tellinger and stuff with the stones in South Africa and such.
We can deduce from the patina growth on the broken rocks that these walls, as they stand here, have probably been standing in the shape for the last 2, maybe even 3,000 years. It's a wide guess, but it tells us it's not 200 years ago.
And this is a beautiful one. This one actually rings at 2 different frequencies.
Amazing discoveries that just, we don't know our history. We don't know our history, and it's on purpose that we don't, because it's to isolate us and to separate us from the power that we actually have, that we're actually heirs to. We don't know our history. Check out this story on Star Forts.
The following is something to think about from Strange Landings TV.
All around the world, hundreds of beautiful structures and earthworks adorn our earth, like jewels decorated like the lace of the dress of a fine lady. These designs are so intricate and precise, yet similar, as if designed by the same architect the world over in what mainstream calls neoclassical style. While the official story is that they were first developed in Italy during the mid-15th century, with the peculiar acute angles of the towers evolving in order to eliminate dead zones near the base of the towers, these walls would have been decimated under siege from cannon fire regardless of angle, assuming such a hypothesis. We find these structures all over the world, with many still remaining intact in Belgium and the Netherlands, but not limited to America, India, Japan, Africa, Australia, Russia, and almost any other place imaginable. Various emperors have recorded working and repairing such structures, including how many men and what kind of work was done. But the true origin of these structures is evasive, with artifacts being found at these locations from the most primitive times. Records speak of forts being built on the remains of ancient structures, and indeed, it seems this part of our history is actively being hidden from us. Attempts to brush off a 2,500-kilometer long geoengineering feat of incredibly precise and monumental earthwork which dominates the landscape, dwarfing roads and buildings as the work of primitive, tribal people, while the repairs that we do to these ancient structures in the modern day deteriorate far before the original architecture. While wars were definitely fought from these structures over time, the design is not likely to have been developed for military purposes. Instead, likely having been frequently repurposed for battle the world over. For example, the points along the walls of these structures point inwards far more often than not, and a lot of cannons we see positioned in modern day tours don't seem at all practical to aim at moving targets. And what is with these outposts? Is this where they would position the soldiers they wanted to get rid of? Not to mention, many of these buildings are too small to defend anyone in any way. Almost all are built along water, with many built on peninsulas, sealed off on one end, but completely left open on the other. In many depictions, we don't even see any cannons, but instead we see peculiar towers, antennae, and spheres with markings on old maps as if they're Christian churches with crosses, and even Orthodox crosses in places like Western Europe. And what's this? Is it Shiva's Trishul? Are these various forms of antenna perhaps something to do with an original forces that fueled what we have now left of an ancient spiritual science? Indeed, in many of these places, compasses and other devices go crazy as they detect drastic energy fluctuations around the rays of these star forts. These buildings all demonstrate a stunning symmetrical and detail, making more sense to be connected to ley lines, sacred geometry, or some other kind of energetic pattern. They are intricately precise structures with many small ones connected to larger networks in radiating geometrical patterns. They have beautiful gardenscapes, not your typical medieval fortifications, oh no. All depictions portray round metal balls in prominent places. Are they just designs, or do they serve some kind of practical function? Do these all have something to do with harnessing some form of atmospheric electricity? While some of these structures, including some of the chimneys, survive to the modern day, not very much does, as many locations where these star forts are located on old maps have recently been flooded due to quarries or mysterious craters appearing over these sites. Or this example, where it is half buried by a mountain. Clearly this didn't happen in recent history. And while there are more questions uncovered when discovering the subject of star forts, it is a page to the vast and unbelievable history of which we are just now inheriting. So as we see, we have a lot that we really just don't know a whole lot about. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I know Dzhivgini has got a whole lot more stuff for us to see in future episodes. Like, for example, our food and how they lied about our food. They've got the whole world, almost the whole world, a lot of the world, participating in slaughter of animals. And most of the people in the world don't want to participate in this, but they're still part of this whole system, and they're doing it on a regular basis. This is actually, and I'm not going to get into the whole animal sacrifice aspect of it and where that energy is being directed, but the very fact that by proxy people are engaged in this sort of violence, and they are helpless. They're helpless, except in the choice of what they eat. So for those of us that are vegan, good on you. And vegetarian too, and just that kind of consciousness. I'm not saying perfection is necessary, but it's the consciousness and it's the intention that creates the reality. That is like the catalyst that magnetizes reality into a form, like the form that iron filings follow when placed beneath a magnet. It follows a form, and that's the way physical reality follows. It relays into a physical manifestation of, I guess you could say, like dominoes falling, or a sequence of events. It's hard to put these non-physical concepts into words, but you gotta start somewhere. So a lot of our food isn't food. And when we start eating our highest vibrational food and the food that's really meant for us as B'nai Elohim, then we will start acting like that, and we'll start manifesting like that, and we'll move into that dimension. It's already happening. We're already moving into that. A lot of us are already there, and it's accelerating as the truth comes out more and more. The truth about the garbage they're feeding us in fast food chains. Ma'am, and I worked in this fast food chain. I did my time. You better think about what you're trying to do to me, yeah. Think. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. And that, my friends, was actually after making full vegan switch. I was subjected to this because that was my job. That was what I had to do. And I did my time, and I served people the most grotesque hot dogs and the stalest pizza. It was the worst kind of step down when I had to do that, knowing what I was really doing. And yet this is what had to play out. So I had to play out through, call it karma, call it latencies, call it past manifestations that had to play out. It's all set by the intention and the presuppositions that you set in focus. And then the material world has events that have to play out. And once you work through those events, you can create new events. But that's just the way reality is structured. This is like if you go to the blueprint of reality and you open it, and at the first page there's like the legend, right? Of course, I did architecture. So you have the legend, and it's explaining to you the structure and the nature of reality and how things unfold. And that's what you would read there. It's taken me a lot of experience to dig into this and try and figure it out for myself and what works from experience, because a lot of people say a lot of different things. But what works for experience and manifesting, mind you, it sounds great when you first hear of it. But is it true? Do we really have an effect on the physical reality and the circumstances or events that we're capable of dealing with? The answer is yes, but we have to understand how. And we have to step into a space of empowerment from where our perspective is better able to understand these things. But we're shaking off those shackles. Back to the card. Would you like fries with that? Gives plus on any attempt to destroy a green group. So this is like basically pollution, and food, what you eat, affects your mind. So this is like pollution of the mind. And thankfully, while I was there, I never succumbed. I never ate what was constantly being served by myself, and it actually served to grow a form of character. And towards the end of my time there, and I was actually telling people, you know, if you eat this, this is not so good for you. I could tell some people were hurting and they needed to hear it. And then some people, like, there was veggie balls on the menu. Some people got that. Very few people, but then it started becoming popular, and I would start congratulating people, and I would say, hey, look, this is my favorite thing. And I would say things like that because I could, and I could fuel certain realities, and I could take away from other realities. And I realized that I had that power. But the fact that this card can destroy a green group just shows that pollution of the mind starts with the food, but it's not limited to food. But it's very important to just stay conscious of what you're eating and why you're eating it, and the whole energy and intention around it. Would you like fries with that? Nobody has any idea what's in those secret recipes. And when they find out, they forget again. That's kind of like when you read it, you read the name and you can't remember what you just read because it's so long and so foreign to you. That's what I'm saying, the ingredients. And if that goes in your mind, that's going to affect, that totally has an effect. Not to mention the effect that the animal products have on the mind, because you're actually partaking of that animal mind. You're fusing with that animal mind, so to speak. That's what the whole ritual of eating another flesh being is all about. And they used to eat organs and such in our history, but now it's not heard of when you eat your enemy's eyes. But that's a whole other issue. Maybe that's what we're looking at here with the fast food chains, because nobody really has any idea what goes in those hamburgers. And there's a joke about the abattoir being right next to the meat market, or the abattoir being the meat market with the same family name. And then, of course, it's the Italian mob. You have the GTA stories where they play that all the time. And even the meat hanging in the abattoir is literal human bodies. Man, that game really exposed a lot before Miss Happiness got to it. But I want to do a video on that. Like I said, a lot coming. But back to the card again. I keep getting distracted, but this one I have a lot to say. The owner of this card can automatically hide 2 exposed plots on his turn. No action is required. Some kind of truth serum? Huh. Order the fries, Earthling. That gave it away. That gave it away. Who's behind all of this? All of this. Obviously coming from Off-World, because they're acting like it's our fault. They're giving us all these kind of industries and they're blaming us for pollution. They're doing all this mind control and then they're blaming us for the way we act. But they know exactly our script, because they're off-world entities that are looking at us as if from a higher dimension. They can see our whole brain map. They can see our whole mind map, and they just know how to move it. That's how they were able to lock down everybody just like that. But exposure is on its way. It's already happening. There's so much information, and this format really facilitates a dialogue, so we're going to stick with it. And in the new year, I'm going to be releasing some videos on right brain curriculum and just like some courses in that, and it's going to be amazing stuff. So look out for that, because we're moving into a new era. We have to revamp the school system if we're going to revamp the economy, and we're going to revamp the media. We got to revamp the government. We got to revamp education, and we got to revamp society at large. And this is where it starts. We're going to infuse it with a spiritual aspect of right brainism, and we can manifest and take our power back and create a world that we know we're deserving of. We all got to do our part. And right brain, left brain, there's a balance to it all. I'm an artist, and it's been a focus of mine to open up a right brain perspective, because I want to create communities of artists like Michael Tellinger, I mentioned, who actually creates communities where people are all working together and contributing. But imagine if it was a community of artists where artists got together and they just created the art. Everything in the community was art. The buildings were art. Of course, it's going to be that way in this system anyway, because people are volunteering their skills and they're automatically making it nice. But imagine if it was like artists, like people who actually said, I'm an artist, I'm right brain, and I want to express this, and then all got together and manifested a reality. That's my vision, and that's where I'm starting. So I'm sure that vision's even going to grow over time, because that's the way it is. And I'm down with that, because that's the nature of the divine source that's expanding, constantly expanding. And that's all of us have this potential. So we can all move forward. Let's all do it. We're in the new age. We're already there. Let's start acting like it. Let's pick up the reins and take back the power. Take back the throne. And we'll each do our part, because we each are a little piece of that something special.
Something special, no one just like you. Stamped on your thumb is a sign that you are you. Something special, God made only one. He wrote, I love you on the end of your thumb.
Like, we all got to do our part. And my part's different than your part. And everybody, like, I started making videos a while, like, I think it was like 2 years back. Well, actually, it was a year ago. I started making videos a year ago because I was watching Aaron Doughty, and he says that he started by making daily YouTube videos. And that's great because some people have an expressive nature. Thankfully, his message resonated with me, and I got to start making videos with recipes. But really, that served as a catalyst to just kind of get my butt moving, because the recipes, and honestly, I love recipes, but it's not doing as well. And eventually I started putting the energy into this message, and that's how this message took off. But it's all a stage of growing the character to get me there, because I couldn't have handled this at the beginning stages. When I first heard the story, oh, make a video every day, I couldn't handle it. But each of us have a little aspect of developing our own character, and in doing so, we create these ripples. And we all have to share our message.
You found it, share it and share it again, with a song in your heart and a great big grin. If you know him, introduce him to a friend so he can share it then. If you found it, share it and share again, with a song in your heart and a great big grin. If you know him, to a friend so he can share it then. So he can share it then.
Because we each got that little piece of the puzzle, and that's our part of the painting. So let's paint our part the best we can and just make it the best for everybody. And it's not a coincidence that all of the world is in this upheaval and everything's going crazy and we don't know what 2020's brought us and all this stuff that people are saying. We have chosen to come to this time for a specific reason. Everybody has their own reason, but we are powerful enough to use this episode to grow through it and to create a character that is so strong that we know that what we've been through has created someone to be reckoned with. And whatever that is for each of us is what it's going to take to move forward and create a part of that picture. But now we know more of who we are. We've been tuned to a little bit more of a clearer signal of who our heart is resonating us as. This is kind of putting the words of Bashar into different words, because he says that our resonance, our state, is who we really are. And so that state of being is what is actually manifesting and creating. And that state is based on how we're reacting to our circumstances. So if we see something, do we react to it the way that it's presenting itself to? And that's what reality transurfing has to do with, is when you put a slide in front of it or a different reaction as if it was something else, then it has to play out to match that sort of energetic wave that's going out, so it reverbs back. That's what physical events and reality is. It's a reverb. It's a reverb of the vibration, the sound, the frequency of which we're emitting from our energy sources, our chakras, our beingness. That is the essence of how we manifest. And when we go within and we visualize, we change our state, and we feel these emotions that changes the state, and that changes the radiation, and that reflects back to us as physical events. Once again, this is one of the pointers on how reality works. Just part of the manual. It's not that I figured this out. This is just part of the manual. But when we figure this out, we're able to use the code, rewrite the code, and create a story, it's like a video game. You rewrite the video game and create a story, an event, and character that however you see it fit, however you want it, you can have some real fun. We can have some real fun and create a really amazing future. A really amazing future that we only thought was fairy tale possible, maybe even out of this dimension possible. Maybe we didn't even imagine it, but someone somewhere imagined it, and that's how it's come into this reality, and we can see it through. We can really see it through. It's amazing the potential that we have as B'nai Elohim. Sons of the Elohim. And we were chosen, and we chose both. We were chosen and we chose to be born into this time at this specific moment. For this time. So do your part, because the time is now. The time is now. And we're going to go out with a song. And this song is just saying the same thing. There's chaos in the world, but if we have peace in our heart, because we're connected to this divine source of all things that gives us life and all things existence, because it is what is. The isness of what is that gives rise to its isness. It's a fractal refraction of reverberation. So it echoes against itself and creates all of us as individuals modeled within itself, looking within itself, unto itself, from within itself. Describing the infinite. Very fun, isn't it? But we were chosen to be in this time for such a time as this. So be optimistic, because we have the potential to really move forward and create the best case scenario. Let's not base it on our past and look at our past history and say, what can we do? Let's just use our imagination, totally plug into the divine possibilities of the quantum probability source field and enter into this divine matrix of all infinite potential. Create this potential. Each of us has a little piece to play. So with that being said, have an amazing day. Stay well, stay safe, and stay optimistic, because we're creating this new world. We're moving forward. We're moving forward one way or the other, and it's being exposed. So see you in the next episode. Agape, salaam, namaste.
Top story once again at this hour is the continually escalating situation in the Middle East. Soviet, Libyan, and Syrian forces are all reportedly building up along the southern Lebanese border, threatening to invade Israel. Warnings from the United States and our allies.
The world around us in a rage. Newspapers tell of fear on every page. The prophecies of old unravel and unfold in time's last days in of the age. Satan strikes with deceitful power, seeking and searching whom he may devour. For prophets do arise, the signs are in the skies, the sands run down earth's final hour. But you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this, to fulfill, you see, the destiny for your life. Special plans and preparation for this generation. You have come into the kingdom for such a time as this. Such a time as this. This is it. God placed his special gifts in you. Believer, fight for what you know is true. Tempted to compromise, cast down enemy lies, courageously stand up for the truth. 'Cause you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this, to fulfill, you see, the destiny for your life. Special plans and preparation for this generation. You have come into the kingdom for such a time as this. Such a time as this. This is it. You have come into the kingdom for such a time as this, to fulfill, you see, the destiny for your life. Special plans and preparation for this generation. You have come into the kingdom for such a time as this.